For the few people watching this, they're new to the industry that don't know what Filecoin is. Could you give like a brief intro?
Filecoin is the world's largest decentralized storage network. There's a lot of trends right now you might hear in crypto like DePIN or AI. I think in the government and policy space, there's a lot of people, you can imagine the amount of conversations around regulation of AI or harmful things that AI could contribute towards. I think the everyday consumer probably is mixed. I think most people like to use AI. Some people are scared of it because it might replace their jobs. There's still a lot of users that don't use AI, but we're seeing huge growths in companies and everyday users and content creators leveraging it for different parts of their work. Imagine trying to describe to somebody a decade or 2 decades ago, hey, one day people are gonna love living in the houses of strangers, right? That's really hard for someone to imagine, but when Airbnb came about, they sold into their story about everything that you can get that is different from a hotel.
Data privacy has been a huge concern with the growth of AI, at least on the tech side. Does the mainstream worry about their data as much? There's been discussions around that. They seem to think that people don't care as much about their data, which is crazy. We're in Thailand with Global Blockchain Show, and today I'm with Clara from Filecoin Foundation. Clara, it's good to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
How's been DevCon so far? It's been super busy this week, isn't it?
It's been crazy. There are side events. There were a few of us in Chiang Mai, even the week before Bangkok. And so it's been so many days of just amazing people and amazing conversations.
What do you come here looking for?
Yeah, so we actually have 3 conferences back to back. We had a hacker house with all of our developers in Chiang Mai right before DevCon. And then we had 3 days of the Filecoin Dev Summit where we were really mapping our roadmap for next year and bringing in developers that wanted to contribute to that. And then finally, we had Phil Bangkok main stage with CoinDesk Live, where we had a number of exciting announcements on stage, live streamed. I think we had 130,000 people that tuned in live during the event. And then we had a ton of people in person as well.
It's great. For the few people watching this, maybe they're new to the industry that don't know what Filecoin is. Could you give like a brief intro?
Yeah, so Filecoin is the world's largest decentralized storage network. There's a lot of trends right now you might hear in crypto like DePIN or AI, and Filecoin is really a mix of both. We are the earliest decentralized physical infrastructure network where we have hundreds of thousands of data centers all around the world. I think the latest count is close to 3,000 of entrepreneurs building their own data centers. And this is in every country you can imagine. And our network allows for people with data to store it in a decentralized way. So we work with large enterprises, we work with large academic institutions, we work with groups like Internet Archive to really store humanity's most important information. And obviously, you can imagine AI data is a part of all of this equation where today we're seeing more and more distrust in how AI is leveraging data. I think it's the latest number is around 80% of people don't actually trust AI and what data it's pulling from or what it might do to their data. And so we allow for the ability to trace how data is stored and changed over time, really helping with the content integrity layer as well, beyond the privacy concerns of your data belonging to big tech.
Yeah, data privacy has been a huge concern with the growth of AI, at least on the tech side. I'm not sure, like, does the mainstream worry about their data as much? Because there's been discussions around that. I've talked with a few people that work more on the social media side. They seem to think that people don't care as much about their data, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're polling. I think in the government and policy space, there's a lot of people, you can imagine the amount of conversations around regulation of AI or harmful things that AI could contribute towards. I think the everyday consumer probably is mixed. I think most people like to use AI. Some people are scared of it because it might replace their jobs, right? So a lot of these surveys, it really comes down to who you poll.
Yeah, right. Tell me about the story about Filecoin.
Yeah, so at Filecoin, we really felt like we've been working on this for over the last decade. The original Filecoin white paper was written by Juan Benet in 2014. And the vision has always been For us to really think about a robust and fully decentralized web, we have to start at the data layer. Because today, when you search for something online, it's already a biased result you're getting. You have Google, where you might pay the most in advertising dollars to get something that you're searching for. It may not be the same as searching for information in a physical library where there's indexes, you're looking for a book on gardening, and you're going to find the most unbiased version of that. And so today's internet is quite broken because the business model is completely off of harvesting user data in order for any company to really grow or scale. And you can just look at the venture capital history of large tech companies that have been funded over time, or even startups that have made their way maybe through a series C or D, and then they get acquired, right? It's no longer a company trying to build the best next thing. Sometimes it's that exit or acquisition. And we really want to give not only users, but also startups all around the world thinking about building the biggest and best next thing, the opportunity to do so where their data isn't necessarily siloed or owned by big tech at the end of the day. So we have tons of companies building on the Filecoin ecosystem that are trying to replace even daily apps that you might be using, right? So Zoom, we have a company called Huddle01 that's like Zoom, but a decentralized way where you can do video conferencing, but you can also have that layer of security and also at a fraction of the cost. We have companies like Sriracha that does hot storage. And so if you wanted something more like a Dropbox or Google Drive interface, you could do that. Ghost Drive helps you back up information on your phone if you don't want to pay Apple another $10 more each month for more data, right? So we're seeing a rise of so many users actually even using data more than ever. I think since a decade ago, I think there's been an 826% increase in the amount of overall data consumed by everyday people. And we're going to see that number continue to rise, that growth over time.
That's amazing. Tell me how you got involved with Filecoin. Just a quick fun story and maybe like an introduction to how Filecoin started.
Yeah. So I got involved in Filecoin because I've spent most of my career working on content integrity. I've worked in places like the U.S. government, at the White House and Department of Homeland Security, really looking at how terrorists were leveraging the web for bad things, and also situations like foreign influence operations where it might lead to distrust in the U.S. election system. And I've also worked on this issue in the trust and safety hat, where I started the world's largest trust and safety professional association, where you have professionals right now at every single tech company really trying to discern how to protect their users, but also how to moderate particular types of content. And ultimately, one of the biggest technical challenges is how you can prove something came from a source, you can imagine, and then how you manage it over time. And this becomes a really hard challenge when data is centralized, and also the way that data is stored today is really by location. So there's a phenomenon that Jonathan Zittrain from the Harvard Berkman Center calls link rot, where I think it's 67% of all links on the web actually are broken. And that's because it's stored by location, not necessarily by an address or a hash. And so we do file storage a slightly different way, where now you have a URL that's quite permanent because it's stored by hash type. And so let's just say someone forgets to pay their AWS web bill for a photo drive or something, or maybe it's a Supreme Court document that's linked. You can always now permanently access it. And this is also being leveraged in the Web3 space. You can imagine people who pay $1 million for at a CryptoPunk or a Bored Ape, they may not want to accidentally just lose that image. But every single content on the web is actually very fragile and vulnerable because there's always a single point of failure. And when you can have multiple nodes upkeep a piece of information, that allows for that resilience. It allows for users to always feel like they can find their content somewhere.
And so like, how long ago did you start at Filecoin?
Yeah, so I actually helped co-found the Filecoin Foundation, which is dealing with not only the largest grants in the Filecoin ecosystem today, but also thinking about hard issues like security or governance, or making sure we can give all the entrepreneurs building on Filecoin the opportunity to thrive and really think about key infrastructure and resources that they may not have to worry about longer term. So today we have around, I think, close to 200 different companies, startups, or projects all building on the Filecoin ecosystem. And like I said, they're building everywhere from on-ramps to how to store enterprise data all the way to really key niche use cases in the Web3 world, like compute over data. Right? So we're thinking about the best way to empower all of these groups to be able to thrive and be able to really help us as a network build towards a better decentralized web. And I got into this because of the challenges I said earlier around wanting to really fix the building blocks of the web, which when it came down to, for me at least, it was around thinking about how we can bring back ownership of data back to the users rather than large companies being able to manage and make decisions for users.
Mm-hmm. And what year was it?
The foundation had been written out in the Filecoin white paper since 2017, but we really didn't start staffing up the team till probably 2020. So I've been doing this for almost the last 4 years, depending on which day you count.
It's a lot. As you see like AI coming, getting more attention and even DePIN, how do you feel like the scene is obviously changing, but everyone knows like DePIN is just like a remix of words. Like every trend comes back with a new name. You see all of this coming back into like full attention, right? Like everyone is doing panels and talking about it and investing on it. How does this play out for Filecoin? Like, is this an exciting moment for you guys?
Yeah, this is so much excitement for us. I mean, I think you could feel it at our events even this week. I think a lot of people, when you're a first mover in a space, we were the earliest decentralized storage network. The white paper was written in 2014, more than a decade ago. When you think about things like this, a lot of people didn't quite understand how data was changing the world at the time. And I think when we think about people understanding DePIN or AI, they're starting to understand why decentralized storage is more important now than ever, because people have distrust in AI. Like I said, there's a lot of monopoly concentration in owning AI companies. If you look at OpenAI, Anthropic, all of these large centralized AI companies today, they're all owned by big tech in some way, or big tech is major investors in them. And the web is just building off of AI. I think it's by, 80 or 90% of the web. Some estimate by 2026 or 2027, most of the content will be generated by AI in some way.
Yeah.
And if we're doing storage, we want to be able to not only store important information, but also help users be able to prove what is true, what is false, how to really manage that over time. And I think there's no better solution to that than decentralized storage networks like Filecoin.
How much of the data is synthetic?
On the web today, or I don't have that number off the top of my head. I don't know if there's an easy way to measure it.
Is there like an estimate of like percentage-wise? Just curious.
Yeah, I think a lot. I mean, my current estimate is there's still a lot of users that don't use AI, but we're seeing huge growths in companies and everyday users and content creators leveraging it for different parts of their work. So I think we're going to see more volume in it. I mean, I know that a lot of even email clients today, you can do automated generated responses leveraging AI for how you respond, right? So I don't know if that's easy to measure, but I don't know. Like my random guess is probably at least 30%. We're going to see a massive increase in adoption as we see more tooling and companies being funded that help users be able to leverage AI for their daily needs. And I think that's going to translate to more and more content on the web being produced. I think you're also starting to see this over the past few years of the risk of generative AI in creating fake news or propaganda or images that people don't have consent over. Sometimes even leveraging people's existing voices and creating deep fakes, which was a big concern in issues like election security. So I think the concern is there. I don't know if anyone has been good at actually giving a good measurement, but I think we're going to see it over time. And I think there's going to be the right entities that can measure just how quickly it's on the rise. It's not just AI in the content space, but you also imagine there's self-driving cars and a lot of actual other industries that are going to be leveraging AI to do automation or, even tracking how cars are navigating the road. I think each self-driving car, some companies use more than 1 terabyte of data just to store and manage all the data and processing that comes around to that. And so I think our big bet is we're going to see more and more consumption of data. We're going to see costs rise. People want to store their data, but sometimes the cost of storing can be so expensive that it can bankrupt people. There's academic institutions we work with, like UC Berkeley, MIT. There's researchers that are doing, really cutting edge particle physics research that takes a lot of data and computational power. And it's really hard for them to do that kind of research and store it in a way if the prices of storing data continues to be on the rise. And so for large scale data sets, we're a fraction of existing centralized providers like AWS. So I think there's a lot of advantage, and there's other advantages we're continuing to build towards that I think are going to be really exciting as we see more DePIN companies come through. They're also going to want to store their data, and they're already pretty Web3 native in understanding how blockchain projects work and blockchain networks. So there's a lot of integrations we hope we can continue to build. We're working with a number of DePIN projects already. There's a company called WeatherXM that has weather stations all around the world, and they believe that weather data can be more accurate when you don't rely on centralized weather station providers, but everyday people can set up their own weather station and help contribute to more accurate data. And you can imagine in islands or more remote areas, when it comes to kite surfing or other sports, sometimes the data can just be so inaccurate. And so they're in that example, they're leveraging Filecoin and our network to be able to store a lot of the data that people are being able to contribute to this weather network. So those are just a few examples of DePIN projects today already leveraging Filecoin.
Yeah, it's amazing. When I think of storing data, I think that I have the sense of like over time, there's going to be volumes and volumes of data, which is great because you could do all sort of things with it. But how do you store all of this? Like, is there a limit? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so you could imagine the Filecoin network similar to a network of Airbnbs. I don't know if we're sitting in an Airbnb right now or what kind of building this is, but imagine trying to describe to somebody a decade or 2 decades ago, hey, one day people are going to love living in the houses of strangers, right? That's really hard for someone to imagine. But when Airbnb came about, they sold into their story about everything that you can get that is different from a hotel, right? And we're in a similar way where you can't just imagine centralized storage in par with decentralized storage. There's so many great properties that are benefits, and there might be things that are trade-offs that centralized providers might have an easier time coordinating with. So if you are a Marriott fan and you're staying at a bunch of chains, you're just used to a certain setting. And sometimes certain Airbnbs can blow away your experience of how great they are. But there might be some that are not as consistent. And I would say our network is no different. We have an incentive structure that allows different people building these data centers all around the world. Some are more mom and pop shop. Some are really huge operations with 100 employees. And they're all customizing to what they think storage needs are for the future. So some might be really good and more enterprise grade equipment that they're trying to optimize for. We have a data center that's in Amsterdam that's using complete solar panels to power their operation. So it allows for this degree of operation and autonomy and customization that you just can't choose or get when you go with a centralized provider. And I think it goes beyond that. There's also that risk of never being able to move your data once it's in AWS or another major tech company that provides centralized cloud services. And we want to make it very, very easy for users to be able to control their data, move their data, and also minimize egress fees for having to transfer it. And I think our ecosystem really gives users not only choice in where they store their data, who they store it with, but also being able to think about the right on-ramps for being able to address it to their content type, right? So if there's archival storage, being able to find a provider that's very specialized in that. If it's, more hot storage or object storage, we have a lot there. And then also for Web3 customization and, whether those are NFTs or whether these are websites or dApps, right? There's so many ways you can imagine users today just need to store. And I think in blockchain, there's this even greater narrative of people saying their projects or their networks are decentralized. But at the end of the day, if their data layer isn't, it's still a single point of failure. So I think a lot of companies today that are building, whether it's on Ethereum, Solana, elsewhere, they're also recognizing that they really have to think about the entire infrastructure end to end, that whole slice that goes beyond the very top layer.
Yeah. What are some of the concerns that you see people having around data today? Because I can imagine it might have evolved when these companies, these larger companies, decide to use Filecoin. What are the questions they come in with? Is it more around like security? Yeah.
I mean, it comes down to, again, like there are so many different customers that use data today, but I would say a lot of enterprises and large scale clients that are looking for data storage, a lot of them really just want the resiliency. They don't want if there's a bomb that hits a data center, and everything just goes down. And you've seen that in other scenarios, like the CrowdStrike incident that took place earlier this year. And that wasn't necessarily related to data centers, but it was a single point of failure in a piece of code that had no resiliency. And it took down entire, airlines and everyday people's ability to function. Right. And that comes when there is no additional resiliency of multiple backups and people being able to have a second option. But we're seeing that in networks of data today, right? A lot of people only put their data in one place. And it's the same thing with the banking system, right? If you put all your money in one bank, you're going to end up losing it all if that bank somehow gets hacked or has a major incident. And so a lot of people talk about diversifying their assets, and we're no different. And we want to make sure you can diversify where you store your data, because it has become something that people really value and see long-term value in. I think there's a group in Hong Kong that runs a newspaper called the South China Morning Post. And their last CEO, Gary, when I was talking to him, he said, our biggest, most valuable asset at this media company is our archives and data. Nothing else is more valuable than us being able to store and preserve that. And you're also seeing this in the realm of content creators or people today that, whether you're a film director, you want to have a way to store it, because there's so much value in data and how you can access it than there was maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. If I were to throw your phone in a pool 20 or 30 years ago, you probably wouldn't hate me unless I threw it in today and you forget to back it up, right? So I think even everyday consumers that are not as tech savvy, they're also feeling the pain points of what if they lose their photos? What if they lose their memories? What if they lose particular documents that they may want to access at any point?
When I think of storing data or storing anything, really, one of the things is how it's organized, and the other would be, I guess, like how I can access it back if I need to. Because, for example, let's take the example of someone backing up their photos.
Yeah.
If everything is like mixed up, or if it's not organized, and if it's hard to access, basically, there's some resistance, and it makes it almost pointless. So how do you address these two factors?
Yeah, and I think this brings me back to AI, right? We're seeing actually tons of companies, even ones we're working with, like Theoric, that are building AI agents. And the beauty of AI agents is you can customize it any way for a particular data set. So when you can combine large archival data stored on a decentralized web with AI agents, you can actually be able to even unlock more permutations of how to leverage that data. And I think, to your question of how do you make it easier to organize, AI is going to make data significantly easier to organize. But like I said before, the data on the web we experience today isn't necessarily one that is equal or all of the data. It's a segment of the data that a lot of large companies today have paid to make sure they come up and surface as results. And we believe that, if we're really going to have key information on the web in the form of a physical library that you can access today, we have to also think about how to make sure we can surface really key information. So a example is there's a group that is building on Filecoin that actually came out of Stanford University. It's a company called Equity Labs, and they are looking right now to build really cutting edge ability to search AI data on environmental information. And the the environment is a really prickly topic because it's so controversial. There might be people who feel very extreme on all ends. And some of that data just might come up because people love to search for controversial topics, right? Or news or what to trust these days. And they actually make sure that when you use their tool, you can pull environmental data from key research, academia, places where you can actually access the best data on the environment today. And I think that's a great example of if you were to search certain results on the web on particular environmental issues, the results just might show up all over the place because of how today's web is organized.
Is there anything exciting coming up for Filecoin?
Yeah, actually this week with Phil Bangkok main stage, we had so many exciting announcements from a project that's building the first Filecoin stablecoin to make it even easier to be able to think about payments when you need to store data. So Filecoin works by you pay in Filecoin to be able to retrieve and store your files. So the stablecoin is just going to add to, even more usability between our storage providers and clients. And at the end of the day, we also have lots of amazing L2s that are launching on Filecoin. Akave, who I think you're going to interview later today, they just announced, I think, a $3.45 million raise. And they're trying to build a lot of the on-ramps for AWS into decentralized storage because a lot of users today are on centralized cloud, and they're trying to make it easier to move to the decentralized storage era. So there's so many exciting startups, and we're going to see actually way more later this year. We also have a ton of projects that have been backing up their chain archival data on Filecoin. So we're even surprised by some of the innovative use cases we've seen that come out of our community and ecosystem.
Yeah, it's truly exciting. I think some people will want to keep up with it. So for those who want to, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @tweetclarita, or X as we use it these days. You can also find more information about the Filecoin Foundation at phil.org. And so if you just go on our website, you'll see the latest updates around what's happening, where we're going to be next, all of our events, and how to get in touch.
Clara, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.